Hi everyone, Gamma here, back again for, I think we're on Chronicle 5 now. We're going to be covering the different side effects that I went through during my treatment and sort of my advice for sort of how I helped cope with them, what they were like, what to look out for, I guess sort of markers to help you anticipate when things are going to be a problem. There's quite a lot to cover, and I'm aware this video is coming out late anyway. I've had a pretty crazy one. I've had assignment work to do that I've got to jump right back on doing after this video is uploaded. I had housework to do. I had just a pretty busy one, so apologies that this is coming out late, but I don't like videos to be done too rushed. I thought it was easier to push this back to today when I had adequate time to do more takes. And yeah, I don't really want to. I don't want to ramble too much because I know I do that anyway. But just without wasting time, I just want to get in and make sure that we cover everything and make it so that this is like a decent amount of time, so that you don't so it's not too rambly or people get bored or whatever. Yeah, so I basically have a list that I'm working from of all the main issues. I guess they're all big. I wouldn't say there's any that are some are more severe, but I wouldn't say any of them are more significant, because I think each of them has their own problems. Like they all interfere in different ways, and they all have their own impacts, and they're all very nuanced. So I'm going to start off with what I've described in the past as the big three, and those are sort of what I would describe as, I guess, at least in the cultural perception of what experiencing cancer is like, what the main symptoms that people experience are. And because a lot of people's knowledge tends to be restricted to those three, we're going to start with them, work through them, and then get into, I guess, what you would consider the more obscure ones if you're not familiar with this area. So starting off with nausea, I say nausea, you probably wrap nausea and sickness into one. That's something I've said in the past. I've never had a problem with that when I was going through treatment. I certainly experienced nausea. Chemos make you sick, or they can make you feel like you're going to be sick for quite a while after you've had your infusion of chemo, and that can get in the way of eating or being able to just generally relax. The good thing is that today, sort of more recently, the medications that we have available to try and prevent people from feeling like they're going to be sick, from stopping people being sick, are very, very effective. And because of those, so I was on 3 separate ones. So it can take quite a lot of medication to stop you from being sick. I guess the main advice for this is to be diligent in communicating with your oncologist and your nursing team about how well they're working, because typically for every patient they can find a combination of medications that will stop you from being sick. So I would say be pretty open about, and that's going to be an advice that sort of is consistent pretty much throughout this video, is communication. And by that I mean, so communicate with your doctors about how well your medications are working, whether you're still experiencing symptoms that are meant to be being addressed by your medications. So like I said, I had 3 separate ones that I took to stop me from being sick, but I got lucky and we had sort of the right combination of medications and the right doses from the get-go, so sickness was never really a problem for me. I guess, and this will link into another topic sort of in the video, would be, because I talk quite a lot about food in this video, and I think in terms of nausea and sickness, I would say don't eat your favourite foods too close to having chemo. So I would say at the very least, the day before, the day or days of, and the day after, don't eat your favourite foods. My partner is a psychologist, and we spoke about this quite a lot when I was doing treatment, and we have in the time since, that you can develop a taste aversion to certain, so you can develop triggers, so your negative experiences with cancer and particularly chemotherapy, you can associate those with flavours of certain foods. So if you indulge in eating your favourite foods around the time you have chemo, you can develop a taste aversion that will stop you from being able to eat them in the future. So just to save yourself the problem of not being able to eat your favourite foods, I would say straight up just avoid it. Other than getting the right combination of medications, there's not a whole bunch you can do about it. But provided you keep that open communication there, it's something that you and your nursing team should be able to address pretty quickly. So moving swiftly on to hair loss. Again, this is another thing you can't really do too much about. I'm in pretty regular communication with a patient who's a loved one of mine who attempted to use a cold cap. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It's not a guaranteed thing like some medications are. If you want to use one to try and keep more of your hair, they basically work by reducing the temperature of like the surface area of your scalp very low, and it links to another food topic I'll be talking about later. The idea is through reducing the temperature of your head and inducing something called vasoconstriction, which is where you reduce the blood flow to the blood vessels closer to the surface of your scalp, you can reduce the amount of chemotherapy flowing there and therefore reduce the effect that it has on cells in those areas and try and mitigate hair loss, which, as you might guess from hearing the description itself, it's not guaranteed to work. If it does, that's great, give it a go. If you're prepared to deal with the discomfort and you understand that there's a chance it may not work, then give it a go. Or as an alternative, you can, this is what I did, and it's what I would personally advise, and that would be to embrace it and I would say take control and shave it yourself. I think the chances are that, especially if you're doing chemo for a while, you're probably going to lose your hair. And I think it's probably healthier for the mental journey that you're going through to embrace it, and rather than, I guess this isn't fully true, but rather than letting the cancer itself take your hair, you're shaving it and you're removing it yourself. And I think getting rid of it in one go, so you have like a nice sort of clean trim that is less noticeable when that falls out, it can make the experience, it makes it faster and it makes it slightly less unpleasant because it's not dropping out, in patches and over like a period of time, and it makes it more noticeable. So I would say to just do that, and then from there you can approach through your social worker if you're assigned one, which you probably will be. That's more if I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but in the UK, between certain ages you tend to be assigned a social worker who can direct you to charities, who can set you up with wigs if that's something you're inclined to do. And I would say, this is an advice for guys as well, if you want a wig, ask for one. Just because there's the perception that you're more likely to style a bald hairstyle if you're a man, it doesn't mean if you're doing chemo you have to do that. And for girls as well, don't feel the expectation that you have to wear a wig to maintain a look of femininity either. It's your journey and you pick. I personally went through the route of, I didn't get a wig. I instead accumulated a very large selection of hats, which you can kind of see in the corner up there, sort of by my coat rack. That's not even all of them, but I accumulated a very big collection of hats that I would just cycle through whenever I did chemo. And that's why I always try and have like a different one on in the videos, or try not to wear them for too long before I go back to them. Beanies are always good because you can sort of, change the shape and how they sit on your head, and they keep you warm. That's something to keep in mind depending on the time of year you do chemo as well, is keep your head warm because you lose a lot of heat through it, and beware of the sun. So make sure because that skin's not really used to seeing the sun so much, so I would say make sure you put sun cream on and just look after it for when you're getting out and about, which leads on pretty nicely to fatigue actually, which is the last of the big three. And yeah, I guess I want to say I'm kind of annoyed at myself for saying there's not much you can do about it, because I don't like that defeatist attitude, but many cancer symptoms, there's not a whole bunch you can do to prevent it, but I guess it's just trying to figure out how you stop it from getting too much in the way. Fatigue is a big thing for me even now, even a year out. I still suffer from a lot of fatigue, and that's due in large part to my treatment. So yeah, I'm pretty chronically tired. I have anxiety as well, which is kind of a double-edged sword because I have anxiety-related sort of insomnia. I don't know exactly how to describe it. So it keeps me up into the night, but it makes it more difficult during the day because I need more energy. So it's not really a fun combination. But I would say the main things to keep in mind for you is to acknowledge your body's signals. I think a lot of people, they want to try and battle against your treatment and your cancer on every front, and I'd say on some level that's correct, but when your body's giving you signals that you're tired and you need rest, then listen to it. And you're going to be tired most of the time and you're going to be sleeping a lot more. That's fine. That's just something that you need to do because it'll keep you functioning to your best ability. Conversely to that though, I would say to try and get out at least once a day for a walk. I know lockdowns made it very difficult to get out and about, especially for people who are vulnerable and have been shielding. Where it's safe and where you can and when you feel able to. And I would say to try and push yourself as well. It's still okay to push yourself while you're doing treatment. I would say to get out and just go for a walk at least around the block, because then you're more cognizant of your body's limits and how they're changing throughout chemo. And it helps maintain your energy levels as well. So advice that I've received from my partner Shannon as well is to try and maintain good sleep hygiene. So what that means is to do things like only use your bed for sleeping. So if you need to sleep a lot, that's fine, but try not to spend all day in bed. At the very least, maybe go and sit downstairs or in another part of the house. If you've got a desk, go and sit there. If you don't intend to sleep, because otherwise you can build up negative associations and like it can make you lethargic if you think, oh, it's okay to spend all the time in bed. Like, you can spend a fair amount of time in bed, that's fine, especially if you've not really got much else to do, which I certainly didn't when I was doing chemo. But try and vary how you spend your time, and also do little things like don't use devices like your mobile devices, any electronic devices, for a set period before you go to bed. I'm not sure exactly how long it is. I would say at least for half hour to an hour. Try not to. I think what people typically recommend is like 2 hours, but I don't think I could maintain that. So like maybe half an hour at the very least before you try and go to bed. I would say turn devices off. Yeah, and like I said before about medications, some of your medications, like obviously chemo, but some tablets as well might make you a bit drowsy. So keep communicating about it. Make sure you're talking to your doctors about it. You'll have an opportunity every time you go in for a cycle of chemotherapy to talk about any problems you're having. Please take advantage of those opportunities, because if there are any changes that need to be made to your meds, that'll just put you in a better position. So speaking of, how your meds might affect it as well. So if we move on to something that a few people might not be familiar with, and it's a side effect called peripheral neuropathy. So what that is basically is where I couldn't give you an exact scientific explanation, but it's essentially nerve endings in parts of your body dying or not working properly, and that can create feelings of numbness in digits or other, extremities or part of the body. I had that in most of my fingers by the time I finished chemo, and in the bottom of my feet. So that created some obstacles, like opening packets or certain things was more difficult, and trying to make sure that I didn't burn myself, which can be a pretty big I don't know what's going on with my words today. A pretty big problem. So this is one that I think is probably one of the most important to keep talking to your doctors about. Certain chemotherapies are probably responsible for this if you're starting to feel it, if you're starting to feel like a creeping numbness across parts of your body, which I still have in places to this day. So you have like a tolerance for it. And what I mean by that is when it starts to get really bad, or when it starts to become noticeable, it's kind of like you can push it to a limit, but eventually you'll have to have your chemo dose changed. And I know that sounds scary, but that happens sometimes to help you cope with treatment better. Your weight will likely fluctuate throughout treatment as well. You'll be weighed pretty regularly. So changes to chemo regimens aren't uncommon, but it's something that you need to keep that honest communication ongoing for, so that changes are being made in the right places and at the right times. What can we do about this? So yeah, it's okay to ask for help. If you need help opening something, it's better to do that than what I did on many occasions, which is where you sort of try and force it, and I've cut my fingers, I've ended up knocking things and hurting myself. So it's okay to ask for help for that. I'm going to be talking about muscle degradation in just a moment, and they'll sort of link together as well, and you'll see why. I would also say to have someone check, sorry about that, my antivirus keeps pinging in the background, I don't know why. If you are interacting with anything that could have, I say an extreme, but like an extreme temperature, so something that's very cold or very hot, like you're running a bath or a shower or you're cooking, something like that, have someone help you with it. It takes 5 seconds for somebody to dip their hand in a bath for you and go, yep, that's fine, no worries, oh no, that's too hot, let me put a bit more cold in there. And yes, it can be slightly embarrassing not being able to do those things for yourself. I know I did. Showering was ridiculous, especially with a PICC line. It was, and later on when I came out of surgery and I was all over the place with sort of drowsiness and fatigue, I had to have my dad sit outside the bathroom sometimes because I was worried I was going to pass out. But it's okay to ask for help, and let's be fair, this is during a time where we need help. That's something I had to deal with. It's not... Don't think of it as an issue of pride. It's wanting to uphold your bodily autonomy, which is one of the most important things to, it's one of the most important things about being a person. So wanting to fight for that and maintain that isn't shameful at all. But I think being honest with yourself about what you can and can't do is extremely important. So yeah, so I mentioned muscle degradation or muscle atrophy, which is essentially where your muscles break down and they become weaker. That's going to happen a lot when you're taking damage from chemo and when you become like a lot more inactive from after your treatment, where you're tired a lot and where you're not feeling very well. If you communicate with your social worker or your doctor about it, you will likely be referred to a physiotherapist, and they'll give you exercises with either, they tend to be exercise bands, which I don't actually have any of mine at the moment, or they have like these putties or clays that you do different exercises with. They'll give you exercises to do, and I would say it's definitely wise to do them. I know sometimes you might struggle with being diligent about them. I know I did. That's fine. You're having a tough time. I think we can give you a break. So yeah, try and stay on top of your exercises, because it can at least delay some of this damage, and it makes it easier to build back up again afterwards. So you haven't got a... I'd say it's all about trying to make physical decline from chemo as gradual as it can be, so that you don't have to do as much to build yourself up post-treatment. Again, it's another area where communication is extremely important and something to try and stay on top of. I just realised this is taking... I don't know if it's because of the waffle or because of there's so much to talk about, but I realise that this is going to end up being a pretty long video. I'm thinking I might make this into 2 parts, because we're coming up to 20 minutes right now. I think this is going to be a 2-parter. I know I'm just making that decision on the fly, and you're seeing me make that decision, so sorry that it's not quite so planned. I just don't want to make it too much to absorb at once, and then it lets me collect my thoughts as well. So I'm going to leave it there, but the next week, next Chronicle will be the second part of this. Feel free to follow me here on Gamma Stories, I'd really appreciate it, but also follow my Instagram page, and if there's any side effect that you're experiencing between now and when I make the next Chronicle and you would like some advice or information, then please feel free to message me. Don't feel like you have to wait for the next video, it's not a problem. Or hop by the stream Wednesday 7 till 9, or Saturday 2 till 4, probably stream before the next Chronicle comes out on those both occasions, and just ask. It's not a problem. So with all that said, I hope you enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys at some point over the next week. So take care, everyone.